Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we talk about all the home teams. We'll concentrate on what's going on in the circus that is the Pelicans. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on with the LSU Tigers, the basketball team. We'll try to take a look also at what's happening with the local baseball teams, LSU, UNO, and Tulane, as they started their seasons this past weekend. And hope to finish off with the New Orleans Saints. Just take a little peek at free agency, which is coming up quicker than you really know it. Again, with franchise tags and transition tags being able to be given out now, and of course the Saints now in the market with not a lot of draft picks to maybe be an active player in free agency. Tonight we have a great guest for you on the program. Doug Mouton of WLAE-TV is with us, along with Les East of CrestCitySports.com. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Les, I always like to give you a little bit more time because you got a lot more stuff going on. Please tell us a little bit about all the publications you're writing for. And believe me, he's got a lot.
I don't know if you got time for all this, Eric, but
we did put a little. We put about 15 minutes in.
Thanks for the opportunity. CrescentCitySports.com. I'm writing for the Advocate, and I'm writing for the New Iberia newspaper, the Daily Iberian, covering LSU for SaturdayDownSouth.com. Those are, I think, the primary ones. I may pop up in other places now and then, but those are the highlights.
And we always appreciate your time on radio and TV as well. Doug, welcome back. Love when we're taping tonight's program. A lot of people know that, and kind of announce it on the show all the time. And I love to get you on when we're taping. It's one of the few times because of our schedules. But thank you again for coming down.
Anytime. I love doing it.
Well, and we appreciate it. And tell the folks about what's going on over at Channel 4.
Well, we're still doing 4th Down on 4 year round.
Yes.
And it never stops. Look, I mean, no question about it. Things slow down a tiny bit when the Saints are done, football's done. But we are all in on Pelicans. College baseball starting is a beautiful thing because we've clearly got some quality teams. And honestly, for me, LSU basketball this year has sort of woken me up a little bit to college basketball in a way that maybe I haven't been. And I know we're going to talk about it in a little bit.
Sure.
But what I love about what Will Wade has done is, for the first time in a couple of decades, it feels sustainable.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like the peaks and valleys where, I mean, obviously LSU's had some really good teams in the last 2 decades, but man, it's like this year to year, it feels like what we're seeing now is sustainable, and I find that really exciting.
Well, and look, I agree with you, and I know Les would as well. For years and years, I think we were spoiled because we had so many teams that were going to the tournament year after year after year. Louisiana was represented, and we've had this dearth now for so long where, again, it's not a consistent entries every year where you could say you're watching March Madness and you're pulling for the home team. You got a little opportunity now with what Will Wade's doing up at LSU.
Yeah, and, there were years where you would get 4 or 5 schools from Louisiana in there, which was a big deal, but it's always centered on LSU.
Sure.
And if LSU is not getting into the NCAA tournament, March Madness is not a big deal around here. But with the way Will Wade has them going right now, and like Doug said, I think it is sustainable. But this first year back, that 1 year I think Johnny Jones went, I don't think anybody thought that was really a benchmark season.
Yes.
But other than that, you really haven't had NCAA experiences for LSU in a while. So I think that's going to be really exciting for everybody.
I would agree with both you guys. And again, we'll talk more about that in our second half hour about college basketball. The big story has been obviously what's going on with Anthony Davis and the Pelicans. And I couldn't have put it any better than what Alvin Gentry did last week when he called it a dumpster fire. And it has been a dumpster fire. And it was unnecessary. And I think all of us that have been watching this very, very closely realize that all this was very, very unnecessary. I used the comparison on my radio show of Ricky Jackson, a guy that's beloved in this town, Mr. Saint. I mean, outside of Archie Manning up until when he was here, the greatest Saint of all time. Some will say he is the greatest Saint of all time up until Drew Brees walked in those doors. Ricky Jackson labored for the Saints for 13 years. Again, some great teams, but again, not good enough to get over the hump of the San Francisco 49ers. But yet he wanted to win a ring. When he left New Orleans to go to San Francisco to win a ring, no one in New Orleans, again, was upset with him. Nobody was angry with him. It didn't hurt his cachet with the fans. He was still revered as one of the greatest of all time. He did it the right way. On the flip side, what Anthony Davis has done is chose the nuclear option. Through his representation, whatever it is at this point, again, instead of doing this and keeping it quiet when he said he was not signing the Supermax deal before the trading deadline, again, giving the team some time to at least get themselves together, he didn't. In essence, he forced them into a situation where, again, he was trying to bully them into moving him to Los Angeles to play for the Lakers. And of course, with that has gone his reputation here in New Orleans. And now it's gotten to the point where, again, you've got the NBA that has turned a blind eye to what's going on. You've got tampering, collusion. You got players walking out. You got AD walking out on halftime on his team. You got a situation where AD is commenting on other teams when he's still under contract for a year and a half. I've never seen anything like it. Doug?
Yeah, it's been brutal. And look, I'll say this: I'm not sure there is a good way to go out when you're 25 and pushing your way out of the door. Look, Ricky Jackson was way on the back end of his career, in his mid-30s by the time that happened. Anthony Davis, I mean, in theory, in baseball they say 27 is your optimum peak year. Like, Anthony Davis is still not even at his peak yet. He's still getting better and already demanding out. I'm not sure there's a way you can do that gracefully. But obviously this whole situation has been butchered. It's been butchered across the board. Look, and I don't blame the Pelicans for play. Okay, let me take a step back. The NBA said they didn't really threaten to fine, but what they did was, when the gangster would say, "I know where your family lives,"
right?
They brought up the first half of the rule, which is the integrity of the game. Never mentioned the second half of the rule, which is a minimum $100,000 a game fine. But clearly, there's an implication that if they didn't play him, a fine was coming. I don't blame the Pelicans for not taking a few million in fines. You got to do it. But now at this point, once we got past the All-Star break, it's hurting the Pelicans. Danny Ferry told the New York Times that he's going to try to fight that. It hurts the Pelicans three ways for him to be playing. One, if he gets hurt in any kind of serious way, it could diminish his trade value a little or a lot. Two, it's keeping some of your young guys off the court in big situations. You need to look at Frank Jackson and Sheck Diallo and Kenrich Williams and see if they can play. And you can't have Anthony Davis on the court with them because you're not really seeing. And then three, if he artificially helps you win a game or two, it hurts your draft position. It doesn't help you in any way, and there are three tangible ways that it hurts to have him on the court. The NBA wants to protect the integrity, but there's no integrity going on there, and certainly nobody in New Orleans wants to see it. I know a bunch of season ticket holders, and they would all rather see Anthony Davis going. Nobody in New Orleans, maybe for road games you can make that argument, but I still don't buy it. The team ought to be allowed to do what's in the best interest of the team, and playing Anthony Davis is clearly not.
Couldn't agree more. Les, your thoughts?
What was it the Godfather said? I made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Right. Exactly.
I think that was
Right.
kind of what the NBA did on a smaller scale, obviously. Two things. One, you and I are old enough, Doug's maybe close enough to remember when Danny Abramowitz left and went to San Francisco also. And I think everybody in the city said, this guy deserves to go to a winner. Good for him.
Sure.
And so, another guy who left the right way and people understood because he was deeper into his career, like you said about Ricky. Here's my suggestion for the Pelicans moving forward is Danny Ferry picks up the phone calls Adam Silver and says, you guys set the precedent. You fined Anthony Davis the maximum amount allowable under the CBA for going public with his trade demand. You said at All-Star Weekend, Mr. Commissioner, that you fined him because it was detrimental to the team and the league what he did. So you've set the precedent for disciplining him for what he did. After that, he walked out on our team because he had a bruised shoulder. So we are suspending him indefinitely with pay. Just wanted to give you a heads up before we go public with it. You're going to get a grievance filed by the Players Association, but that's what player associations do. But you live with that. And how can the NBA come back and say, well, you can't suspend him?
Right.
Well, you already disciplined him for the exact same thing,
doubt.
and we have 2 reasons for disciplining him. So suspend him, pay him,
Yes.
and just remove him from the equation.
You know, I think that's a great thought there, because if you suspend him and don't pay him,
Well, you can't do that.
Right. The Players Association is going to go bonkers.
Right.
But a suspension with full pay. By the way, he'll make $7 million over the last 23 games. Okay, he's not exactly going to go into the poorhouse.
That's a great point. I'm going to steal that. He used that on the air one day.
$7 million.
That is beautiful. It's only $7 million.
I mean,
yeah, and you're 100% right. You have to pay him.
Yes.
If you don't pay him, then you get really dicey. Any grievance, if the guy's getting his money, the grievance is not going to have the same teeth.
Well, he said he doesn't want to play in New Orleans. We're giving him his wish early.
Yes.
We haven't been able to trade him yet, but we're not playing him in New Orleans. We're giving him what he wants.
Guys, I've never, look, we've seen free agents out there give a list of destinations. What happened over the weekend in Charlotte was just mind-boggling. I mean, the flip-flopping, all in front of the NBA and the international media and saying, yeah, okay, there was a destination list, okay? And then, again, going in front of WLAE-TV and saying, all 29 other teams are available. That's my destination. Any of the 29 other teams. Of course, if you're sitting in New Orleans, you're going like, wait a minute, everybody but us? But, again, that ship has sailed. But to go public with that, okay? And really put the organizations back against the wall. And as you mentioned, Doug, not a peep from the NBA on this.
And look, the small market thing, New Orleans can't win because it's a small market, is 100% wrong. Oklahoma City, although people don't believe this in New Orleans, is a slightly bigger market, is in the same tier as New Orleans.
Sure.
San Antonio has been the league's poster child franchise for winning. They are in the same tier as New Orleans in the smallest of possible markets. It is absolutely possible. Is it slightly more difficult? Of course. You're playing with a slightly different deck than trying to lure people to LA or Chicago or New York. I get that. But it is 100% possible to win in New Orleans. Don't believe any of that part.
Les, your thoughts, because I agree with Doug.
Well, absolutely. And the reason they haven't won more with Anthony Davis is because, I'm sure this is another topic we'll get to.
It is on the list.
The former general manager did not surround him with enough pieces to succeed. They had 7 years to build around one of the best young players to come into the league in the last decade. And had they done that, I think Anthony Davis would have at least considered re-upping with New Orleans if he saw progress toward a championship. And had they done a better job of surrounding him with the right pieces, that could have happened. So it's not the market size, although you're right, it is a factor. It makes it harder. But it would not have prevented them from keeping him or competing for a championship had the front office done a better job.
I couldn't agree more. And it kind of takes me back to my first point. 7 years of Dell Demps without Anthony Davis, 9 years total of Dell Demps. The inability of ownership to be able to see the forest for the trees here and to be able to figure out, again, we have to make a move at some point. I think most fans would have said, man, you've given us 7 years. I understand you're young. Again, nothing's happening here. At this point, you know what? If you got to go, you got to go. Okay? But it's the way he has done this, using this nuclear option, which again has people frustrated in this town to the point, as Doug, you mentioned, season ticket holders who would rather see a bunch of no names than to see Anthony Davis on the court right now.
No, yeah, because look, and every city is this way. We've lived a few places, with jobs, like, you better be loyal to that city if you're living in that city. And if you say, I don't like your city, every city will cut you.
Sure.
That being said, in New Orleans,
where we love to be
loyalty
loved?
to New Orleans, multiply everybody else times 2, and that's where New Orleanians are. All New Orleanians want is somebody who wants to be here. And I'll tell you, because Les alluded to this a little bit, I think the biggest mistake from the Dell Demps standpoint, because look, you say 7 years of Anthony Davis, and that's true, but I would also argue maybe the first 2 years he wasn't quite Anthony Davis. He wasn't that level.
He was
of player.
coddled by Monty Williams.
So it's really the last 5. The mistake came early. The mistake came the year they went out and got Tyreek Evans and built that way. What they should have done when Anthony Davis was 21 in year 3 is to draft and try to build with young players. What they did was every signing the Pelicans made, they are signing people who have already reached their ceiling. Tyreek Evans being my perfect example, a guy who was as good as he was ever going to be when you signed him, 4 years into his time in the NBA. Instead of trying to buy some more low pieces and build.
Yes.
They tried to, they were almost too anxious to win right away with Anthony Davis, and they tried to go all in too early, whereas if they could have built with younger pieces. And then even if you look back a couple of years ago when they drafted Buddy Hield, there was a big argument in the draft. Who do you take? Personally, I like Jamal Murray better at the time. I said it on TV a bunch. It was either Jamal Murray and Buddy Hield. Turns out they have both turned into terrific players.
Yes.
If you just had one of those guys right now, then even this rebuild you'd be looking about, if you had either Murray or Hield with Drew Holiday and trading Anthony Davis and getting a bunch of assets, you'd be in so much better shape. Dell Demps' entire mindset from the start, his hatred of the NBA draft, I never liked. It is possible. Some of my favorite young teams, Brooklyn might be my favorite young team in basketball right now. They've built through the draft. It's a crazy concept. You can do it, especially when this team's going to be looking at lottery picks for the next couple of years. It is possible to do it that way, and I would love to see them get a GM who would try that.
Your thoughts on Doug? What Doug just had to say.
Well, a couple of things. One, Dell Demps would have been the perfect general manager for Byron Scott.
Yes.
Byron Scott
Absolutely.
hated
Yes.
playing rookies
Yes.
as much as Demps hated drafting.
No doubt.
So that
That
would
would
have
have
been
marriage made in heaven.
and that leads into my other point, which is about that same time you talk about the other big mistake. Another big mistake, and I've said this on this show before, that they reached a point, that first time they went to the playoffs with Davis, they realized that the Monty Williams, Dell Demps thing wasn't working. They had to make a choice, and they made the wrong choice. They had a good coach. I don't know where they would be today had Monty Williams still been the coach, but I think they would have been better off than they were. And you would have gotten Dell Demps out of the way. You could have brought in a general manager who was on the same page with a coach who had done a really good job. And I'd like to see what would have happened had they chosen Monty Williams instead of Dell Demps at that time. That was a fork in the road, and they chose the wrong direction.
Staying with Dell Demps for a moment, was the push to be able to get good quickly, to be able to be a playoff team quickly, was that about, again, Anthony Davis? Or was that about Mr. Benson's age? Was there a push now to be able to say, wow, Mr. Benson's getting up in age, let's try to win a championship while he's alive? Again, because that's been some of the narrative out there. That's what this was about. Instead of trying to build slow through the draft, especially what small markets normally would do.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe that. Look, Tom Benson, the way I read it, and I'm not trying to speak for him, was that he was 90% invested in the Saints and took on the Pelicans to try to help the city, but was never quite as invested. I just think Dell Demps, that's his MO and always has been. That's who he is. I think that was driven by Dell Demps. I do think Gail Benson has much more of an interest and desire to win in the NBA. I think she is going to be more of a much more active NBA owner, and I think maybe she already is, than her husband was. And I would certainly like to see that. I think we would all agree on this. The one thing they need is Mickey Loomis not making final calls on the Pelicans. I'm sure we're going to get to that.
We will.
That to me, look, it starts at the top. And what Mickey Loomis has done with the Saints, he and Sean Payton have had a spectacular run together. It has been one of the winningest NFL franchises for a team that no one thought had a chance to win when they both arrived here. I get all that. But from a basketball side, he is not the guy who should be running the show.
No doubt. Well, about Mr. Benson, do you think that was an emphasis for the organization?
I don't think it was an emphasis. It may have been in the back of their minds, but I think that the primary thing was they felt an urgency to win right away because the team was becoming irrelevant in the wake of Chris Paul leaving. And here, in a miracle, thanks to Mr. Benson's trip to the Vatican, getting the ring, and somehow
crediting the Vatican.
Absolutely, there was divine intervention. There was
that.
divine intervention in those ping pong balls going their way.
Either that or typical NBA. But go ahead.
And Anthony Davis falls into their lap, and I think it's like, well, this is our opportunity to make this team relevant. Let's jump on this right now. Let's rebuild it. Let's win right now. And I think you're right. Anthony Davis wasn't that far along in his career yet. They would have been better off surrounding him with people who could have grown together and been more patient with it. So I think that was more of what drove that thinking back then.
I'm sorry. And honestly, if you're the general manager of a sports franchise, it's your job to put all of that stuff in the back. To not worry about what the influences are and all, but to do what's right for the team and long term, especially in look, and it's the value of hindsight. Long term, to me, that was, and you talked about the fork with Monty Williams, and I agree with you. But that to me was the big fork. About 3 years in, that's when you really needed to start stockpiling some young guys. You still weren't very good. You were getting draft picks. Man, go all in. Hopefully, you maybe get 3 or 4 young guys, one of them, and you start building that way.
And I just wanted to follow up on, you brought up Mrs. Benson. And I think one of the fascinating things in this whole scenario is how she has embraced her role now with Mr. Benson not being here anymore. She is not just sitting back and saying, okay, Mickey and Dennis and you guys, just let me know what's going on and I'll sign the checks when I need to. I mean, she wants to know what's going on. She wants to be a decision maker. I think she has embraced this role, and I think that's great. I think an owner should be engaged to that degree, and they should be eager to make decisions and be involved to the degree that she has been. And that's opened my eyes a little bit. I didn't know that she would be this hands-on this quickly. And I think that's something that we're going to follow very closely going forward because she seems to really be invested in this as a hands-on owner.
We're going to circle back to where the AD plays again. We know he wants to play. We'll do that. But let's go down this path. This is a hire for the future of the franchise. Look, I do not believe this franchise will end up in Las Vegas or Seattle.
No, I don't either.
Okay, I don't. Again, the
either.
NBA wants a team in the Deep South. And again, Gail Benson owns this team. She's vested in this team from the colors to the nickname to everything else. This is kind of her legacy here. Okay, so I think she's going to want to make it work here in New Orleans. But again, the organizational chart has to change. You've got to have a president, again, that knows basketball. It has to be a basketball guy. To me, that guy has to hire a general manager. The general manager, the president, has to hire a coach. Again, if you want that president, he or she answers to Gail Benson. That's fine. I think we all believe Mickey Loomis will be in the room. I mean, even though Mickey Loomis may not be making decisions, you're not going to get the confidence of Lauscha and Loomis and those that have surrounded Benson. I don't think you're going to get them out of the room when decisions are being made. But again, I think there has to be a clear distinction between the NBA team and the NFL team in terms of hierarchy and who's running the team.
I agree completely, and I think there's a good chance that's going to happen because we just talked about Mrs. Benson being engaged in this, and I think for whatever reason, I think Mr. Benson felt more comfortable just letting the Saints people take on the Pelicans deal, whether it was to save front office salary or it's just because he trusted those guys or probably some combination of the two. I don't think that was going to happen under him. I think with Mrs. Benson, she appears to be comfortable having the person who runs the basketball operation report directly to her. I don't think Mickey Loomis is going to have the time to do that if he's going to keep his current job, which is pretty important.
Sure.
So I think the time is ripe, and I think they're going to do it and have somebody and say, this person runs the basketball operation. I think that's what they need, and what they need to do is do exactly what the Saints did in 2006 when they came back and they turned to the NFL and they said, give us some advice on who to hire as a football coach. They came up with Sean Payton. They hit a home run. Go to the NBA and say, are y'all tired of making decisions for our front office? Help us find the right person to run our basketball operation. Give us a list of names. We'll pick the right person, and that's going to be the person who runs our basketball operation going forward.
Doug, your thoughts?
Yeah, the only thing you said that I would say I'm sure hope it doesn't happen is say Mickey Loomis will be in the room. I think this team's not going to have success until he's not in the room. I think you have got to set up two separate organizations.
But how do you keep him out, though, Doug? If he's been a confidant for Gail Benson, Tom Benson, if that group has been again, the right-hand man of Tom Benson, and she's going on the record as saying that she relies on those individuals for advice.
I get it, but I don't think the basketball. I mean, everything starts at the top. I don't think the basketball franchise is going to be successful if Mickey Loomis is making calls, and I think you got to get past that.
Right.
But look,
I agree with you.
I do think you need two guys. You're going to need, and you look, a lot of people have president, general manager, same job, but you need somebody strong in that job. I hope. I know you're going to toss out some names. I hope it's somebody who's willing to build through the draft and to develop young talent. Look, when I watch the team right now, the only guy I'm watching is Frank Jackson. To me, he's the most exciting guy on the court because he's the guy, I don't know his upside.
Right.
I don't know where his ceiling is yet. That's what they need. They need some young guys with some ability that have some upside, and we don't know where their ceiling is.
Right.
And if we had one more of those guys right now, like I said, even if it was just from 2 years ago, we'd be in a lot better shape than we are right now. Instead, we're looking at a couple of years here, as opposed to a team that would be ready to reboot right away.
But again, and this is why, again, with this next hire, why this next hire is so important. Again, someone that can sit across the table from a Danny Ainge and is not going to get fleeced.
Right.
Somebody can look in the eyes of other general managers. They've been there before. Okay, they understand the NBA. And again, what is compensation for a player of the talent of Anthony Davis? But also, as you've mentioned several times tonight, someone that understands the draft, that understands again how to evaluate talent, how to cultivate talent, how to get the most out of develop talent, and that has to go from again the top all the way down to the coaching staff because you're going to have to build through the draft in a place like New Orleans. Look, you had Chris Paul, you had Anthony Davis. Show me one free agent that was knocking the door down to go play with those generational players. Not one.
Well, that's my whole point. I'm sorry, Les. That's my whole point towards this team needs to build through the draft. In LA, they could start from zero and get 3 free agents in there. In New York, you can do the same thing. Let's just say that 3 years ago they had drafted Jamal Murray. And all of a sudden you got Jamal Murray, who now looks like a budding, big-time player, with Anthony Davis. Then all of a sudden you can go out. It's how Oklahoma City gets Paul George to go there. Then all of a sudden you can get the free agent once you have the base to start with. But the base, and I think in the small markets, the base is going to have to come through the draft. And you're going to have to get a good team through the draft, and hopefully that good team can lure the one guy in free agency that can put you over the top.
Les?
Oklahoma City is fascinating to me. You brought them up as an example of a small market team because they were able to draft a big 3.
They were the crazy draft.
And they couldn't pay all 3. They could only keep one, Russell Westbrook, and they're still a really good franchise because they had established themselves as a good franchise. He was so good, and they had good front office and good coaching, and they've managed to sustain it for a while. So I think that's kind of a pretty good model for a small market going forward. But as far as the Mickey Loomis thing, one thing real quick I'll say is he can be in the room, just don't give him the final say.
Amen. I'm with you.
Now I don't know how tenable that is, but he can't be the last one speaking to Mrs. Benson on the way out of the room.
Clearly,
it has to be the basketball guy.
And I think we all agree. Clearly, both organizations have to be separate and apart. In order for this to work.
They're billion-dollar operations.
But for the reputation of the organization as well. Look, right now the organization is looked at as, again, a basketball team that's run by football people. And that's the way it's looked at around the NBA.
Because I think that's the truth.
And you've got to change that narrative here. And this is where you change it. Which leads me again to the next step in this, and that is who will be hired, who can be on this list. Danny Ferry has taken over as the interim general manager. Danny Ferry is tied to Dell Demps over the last 2 years. I mean, they've had him in a closet for the last 2 years because of the situation that happened in Atlanta. You know, again, I'm not saying Danny Ferry wasn't a great general manager. He did a great job in Cleveland. He did a tremendous job in Atlanta. But again, he has baggage. And you got a situation with, again, this organization, when I talk about the Benson organization as a whole, in a lot of cases, they rely on people they trust, people they know, people they're familiar with. And that's why you keep hearing the names, of Avery Johnson and Joe Dumars, because they've been around the organization. That would be a fatal mistake in my mind. I think you have to open it up to everyone. Everyone has to have a fair shot, and you have to go out and get the best general manager, the best president of operations, that again can give you what we had just discussed, a team that can build through the draft, someone that understands how to be able to cultivate players, all the things we had talked about. To me, we were hearing that maybe Danny Ferry might have the be the odds-on favorite here. We also heard names like Sam Hinkie, Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas, Avery Johnson, Mike Zarin, who is the assistant general manager up in Boston, and David Griffin, who did a great job in Cleveland, and of course is all over NBA TV. So again, he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. When you look at where they're going now, how critical is it for them to be able to get away from what they normally would do, where I have a comfort level with someone, and to go out and get someone that maybe a brand new voice with a brand new ideas to come in here to really set this organization apart from what has been in the past?
Well, first of all, if Danny Ferry were the right guy, he should have been running the operation sooner. He's been there for two or three years now.
That was my point.
Yeah, so he's been there 2 years now. He should have taken over by now if he was the answer. Secondly, when they fired Dell Demps, they said they've hired an outside firm to help them find the best candidates. Well, if the best candidate's in the building, you don't need to go outside and hire a firm. So, I wonder how strong his candidacy really is. And as far as the names on the list, I don't know everybody's bio, but I would hire somebody who learned from Greg Popovich. I don't care who it is.
But Dell Demps learned from Greg Popovich.
Yeah, well, that's the
He failed that
exception
class?
that proves the rule. Somebody who learned from Greg Popovich. He's the Bill Belichick of the NBA, except he's better. He's better than Bill Belichick is. He's the best coach, general manager in team sports, maybe ever.
Yes.
Model organization. Find me somebody who worked for him. Turn it over to him.
Yeah,
it's that simple.
Well, the following Popovich to me is scary, and I go back to this analogy all the time in these situations. It's like Bob Gibson, one of the great pitchers of my early childhood, trying to teach people how to pitch, and he would say, "Just throw your fastball by," because he could do that,
Right.
but the guys he was coaching couldn't do that because there was only one Bob Gibson. To me, there's only one Popovich, and there's been a lot of guys who work for Popovich who haven't had the success. To me, he is such an anomaly and such a freak of nature, what he's been able to do, that following that model is a road to failure, in the sense that nobody's going to be able to replicate what he did, because he is so unbelievably head and shoulders above everybody else. Look, I love what they've done in Boston, because a lot of their success right now is a team built through the draft.
Absolutely.
I mean, starting with Jason Tatum was a great pick. They have drafted well and developed well.
And been setting up for this Anthony Davis trade too, as well.
And they've done what I
assets.
said. They've done what I said I would like to see the Pelicans do. Although they were able to get Kyrie Irving in there, obviously, and they were able to make the trade for Gordon Hayward. So they're a big market play. But that's, to me, what the Pelicans need to do. They need to get a third pick and a fifth pick and an eighth pick and hit on a couple of them. And then once you get there, try to get the big-time free agent to come join that team and maybe win a championship. Obviously, it's easier to do in Boston. It's one of the cachet franchises in sports. But to me, I like I agree with you 100%. A lot of the old-school guys from other places I'm not crazy about. And this is, again, a little off the wall. I love what LSU did with Will Wade. Will Wade is one of the young analytic guys. There's a lot.
Right.
There's a ton of analytics now in basketball. They're sort of following baseball with how they go with that. And he is a guy that is all in on every piece of analytic information he can get, and he uses it, and he's been incredibly successful. I love the idea of a young guy who's going to do it different. It's going to be a little harder to get it done in New Orleans, but you're going to have to start hitting on some some draft picks. To me, that's the first thing you have to do. And then in 2 or 3 years, let's talk about how we take the step to the next level.
We're going to circle back to the Pelicans. We get back from break. With tonight, Doug Mouton of WLAE-TV and Les East of CrescentCitySports.com are our guests. We'll also talk some LSU basketball. We'll also talk college baseball. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Don't move.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Les East of CrescentCitySports.com, Doug Mouton of WLAE-TV are our guests. We'll finish up our conversation on the Pelicans, and then we'll move to college. Guys, I think the timeline has to be fairly quickly. I don't think you have to rush, but I don't think you can be sitting around at the end of the season still looking for a general manager or again, the president of the organization. I think this guy has to hit the ground running. He has to understand what he has in the locker room. He has to understand, again, what may be out there in terms of Anthony Davis, because you've got to be able to make a deal, again, by draft, because in a lot of cases, you may have the team that you make the deal with making draft picks for you.
Absolutely. I think, first of all, obviously, you have to get the right person so you don't rush into it to the detriment of that. Beyond that, you have enough time. I think the season is going to end on April 9th, something like that, because they're not going to the playoffs. You need to have the general manager in place before then so that when the buzzer goes off on April 9th, you've already made your decision about the coaching staff. I think we probably know what that decision is going to be. And the GM's ready to have exit interviews in lieu of a head coach, if that's the case. Have exit interviews with players and just say, I'm the new guy. This is a direction we're headed in. We're moving forward. This is what we want to accomplish. And, as soon as this season ends, that person is already on board and they're already taking the first steps toward rebuilding this franchise and obviously preparing for free agency and the draft and, of course, the trade.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that would be great if they could. The date coming up, the date that I think is like your drop dead, have to get it done, is May 14th is the lottery.
Yes.
That's the draft lottery. And look, you got to wait for Boston anyway until July.
Sure.
You want to wait till after the lottery, see where you pick. Look, right now, Pelicans have a 6% chance of getting the first pick and a 19% chance of getting a top 3 pick. Right. See who wins the lottery or who's in the top 2 or 3, because obviously, depending on who's lucky enough to get that team may become active in an Anthony Davis trade. It's not Boston or no one else. We don't know yet. There could be a number of things happening. Now, my understanding is Boston's going to have multiple offers for Anthony Davis, one that's going to include Jason Tatum and maybe not a whole lot else, and one that's going to not include Tatum and have pretty much everything, multiple players, multiple picks. And so Boston's going to have a good package on the table no matter what. But somebody gets the number 1 pick that is willing to deal, you might rethink that. So, but to me, that date when the lottery happens, that's when you really got to start getting your ducks in a row.
Doug, does Anthony Davis play in a Pelicans uniform this season?
I hope no, but this weekend is coming up fast, and we haven't heard anything yet.
Except he wants to play.
Except he wants to play, and the fine is still, passively out there. If he does, I hope it's not much. I definitely don't think he plays 23. I think if he plays, it's going to be a few. Then they're going to figure out a way, certainly when you get to the last few weeks, that they can do it. Man, I hope not. But I don't pretend to have some insight.
I don't know how he plays
once
you walked out of your team at half. I don't know how you come back from it.
All of it. I sure hope not.
Right.
I think this shoulder injury may be lingering for a
me too.
while.
Me too.
So,
At least on paper.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So it's going to be a lengthy rehab. I'm with you. I hope he doesn't play. My guess is that he doesn't play. If he does play, then I think that's the result of the front office and ownership being intimidated by the NBA threats. And I'm not so sure that's going to happen. If I had to guess, I would say he does not play again, and that would be best for everybody.
Doug, LSU got off to a big start this week in baseball. Again, look, we knew they were going to be really good. And when you look at some of the freshmen they've added this year, they're going to be really good. How good can this team be?
That's what you didn't look.
Right.
And Josh Smith against Southeastern gets hit in the face
Right.
with a pitch, and he's fine. Look, this LSU team could be as good as any. And the two freshmen that pitched this weekend, Landon Marceau of Destrehan and Jaden Hill, who's from Arkansas, they were both 37th and 38th round draft picks. Don't listen to that. They were both dead set on going to LSU, and two major league teams still said, you know what, let's take them late and see if we can change their minds with a little money, and they couldn't. They both would have been high picks. They're both going to be high picks. They both looked phenomenal this weekend. You know, baseball is all about pitching, and especially starting pitching, and you got two freshmen that look dynamite in week one. Obviously, let's see him in week two.
Right.
But, man, LSU has got a chance to be as good as they have been in a while, and they've been awfully good.
The question I have about that is, again, really Zach Hess at this point, the Friday night starter. To me, he seems tailor-made to be a closer. And with the amount of talent you have in that pitching staff now, why would you force-feed him out there on a Friday night to be your Friday night starter? He may want to be a Friday night starter, but I think he's going to make his money in the major leagues coming out that bullpen.
No doubt, no doubt. He is built to be a closer. He's built to be a big-time closer. Whoever drafts him is going to put him in the bullpen immediately.
Right.
He will not be a starting pitcher in pro baseball because he is tailor-made. His freshman year, what he did in the College World Series was unreal as a closer. That's what he's meant to be. I think he wants to be, and Paul Mainieri is trying to do what's best for him. And look, that's what he does. That's why he's able to get a lot of these recruits. But, man, I wish they would put him in the pen.
Yeah. Your thoughts on LSU?
Well, by all accounts, it's as good a team as maybe Mainieri's had. And one of the keys to that is the pitching that they have. And, you know, pitching roles in February aren't always the same as they're going to be in April and May.
Right,
And I think, was it Lewis Coleman? Who I think was originally a starter, became a closer, I believe on a national championship team, and has gone on to have a very good major league career. So I think that could change, but the key, I think, is that Mainieri has so many options because it looks like they have so much pitching that he can rearrange those roles if he decides that's what's best for the team. So, I mean, you know, February and March aren't going to tell us a lot about this team, but let's see where they are on Memorial Day because they look like they could be a 1 seed or the national number 1 seed, possibly. Let's see what they do over an SEC season. But at this point, what we know about them is as encouraging as it could be.
This has got to be one of the deeper staffs in the nation. When Hilliard's not even getting on the field right now, right? And
or Walker.
And both guys were phenoms.
Absolutely. And that will take you so far in college baseball. And that's why the postseason is really a different season. You play the postseason totally differently than you play leading up to that. This team looks like it's built for the postseason, and it's probably built pretty well for the regular season as well. But sometimes a team, and I think back to I think it was a 13 team, number 1 national seed, went to Omaha, lost twice, and went home.
Yeah.
This team looks like it's built, no matter what happens in the regular season, it looks like it's built for success from Memorial Day on.
Is there a weakness on this team?
Yeah, I don't see it. And I think Les is right. Look, man, you get to the postseason, you got to have arms.
Arms, no doubt.
And Todd Peterson comes out of the bullpen this week throwing 98.
Come on.
And, I mean, they have arms. And on the other side, you got Josh Smith, who has a chance to be as good an all-around player as there is in college baseball. You got Daniel Cabrera, who has a chance to be as good a power hitter as there is in college baseball. Zach Watson is a terrific all-around player. Antoine Duplantis is a great hitter and get-on-table setter guy. They are loaded from top to bottom. They can do a little bit of everything, and they have a lot of arms. And that's how you win a national championship. That's how Florida beat LSU. a couple of years ago was with the arms, and LSU's got some serious arms. Les is right. You got to get them through the next few months.
Right.
But man, the potential I saw this weekend. I watched Jaden Hill literally one inning into his freshman year.
Right.
I told Ricardo LeCompte, and we watched him pitch every pitch in that first inning. I said, I got a new favorite player on this team because this kid is unreal.
Yeah, no doubt. Is there a weakness in your mind? Or too early to tell?
No, I don't know what it is. And you brought up the hitting. You know, that 2013 team, what let them down against UCLA and North Carolina in Omaha was the fact they couldn't hit, especially in that ballpark. This team, that's the key to this team. The pitching depth is huge, but it's also the balance. And you have to be able to do both. And when you get to Omaha, you have to have pitching, but you also have to find a way to score runs in that ballpark, which isn't easy to do. And I think this is a complete team. And so, no, I don't see any weaknesses.
Tulane fans are used to having a prominent baseball program. It hasn't been that way really since Rick Jones left. This year, so far, it's a good start for Tulane. How good can they be this year?
Well, it looks like they'll be improved. The first weekend was encouraging. They had some good wins there against George Washington, I think it was. Came from behind, put up a lot of runs on Sunday. Too early to tell with them. And, you know, I think the key for them is to show progress, show that they're headed in the right direction. And I think they definitely have the potential to do that.
How much do you think Daniel Latham helped?
Yeah, to me that was the whole offseason, was getting Daniel Latham. Daniel Latham was Tulane's closer when they went to College World Series, went to Southeastern. A huge piece of why Southeastern has had phenomenal success. One of the great success stories in college baseball in the last 7 or 8 years. Latham goes back to Tulane to be their pitching coach. You saw it in weekend one. Tulane swept Wright State last year in weekend one. They get Ole Miss this weekend. It's Ole Miss, I want to say, is 11 or 12 in the country right now. You're going to learn immediately how good Tulane is. Let's see what they do against Ole Miss. But I love the Latham hire, and I love what I saw of them in the first weekend. It's George Washington. They scheduled that for a reason, to get some momentum in weekend one. But let's see what they do. But that was a good hire. But look, Travis Jewett, this is year 3, and they passed on Matt Reiser. They passed on Andy Cannizaro.
Right.
He's got to win now, or this year 3 might be his last year.
No, I couldn't agree more.
This is a landmark year for Tulane and the direction of this program.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Meanwhile, on the lakefront, UNO takes a 2 or 3 from Michigan State, a Big Ten team. Your thoughts on the Privateers?
Yeah, I like what Blake Dean has done, and I think he's still figuring it out to a certain extent. He's using a bunch of JUCO guys. They scored a bunch of runs. I like what he's done so far. I want to see it long term, but he can win in that conference. Southland's a winnable. That's a good baseball conference. Taking 2 of 3 from Michigan State is a great way to start. Too early for me to know much because there's a lot of new faces.
Of course.
But I love what he's doing, and I like I said, I think he's starting to figure it out.
And your thoughts on Blake Dean?
Well, I agree with what Doug said. I think I covered LSU when Blake was the hitting coach there. I think he was a very good hire. I think he'll get the job done at UNO. I think bringing in JUCOs is a big deal.
Yes.
Those guys are so much more mature in a lot of cases that they can help you turn it around more quickly than other guys. Certainly, you know, they schedule those teams up north because it's too cold for them to practice. That's why they play them this early. But nonetheless, you beat a Big Ten program. That opens your eyes on the first weekend. So still too early to tell on them, but I would say it's encouraging. And I love the Blake Dean hire, and I haven't seen anything yet to discourage me from that.
People are excited about LSU basketball. They lose to Florida 82-77 in overtime. We got Tennessee on Saturday. Again, maybe a little look ahead, but also, again, look, it's tough because Florida's a little bit different team. You know, playing that 1-2-2 press. They're a team that likes to be able to slow the ball down, take the air out the ball, don't want you to score a lot. Kind of the polar opposite of what the LSU basketball team is right now. But you got to like what Will Wade has done up to this point. To me, again, I think this is as close to a Final Four contender we've seen at LSU in a long, long time. They've got everything. They've got guards that can score. They got guards that can handle. Again, they got bigs that can score outside, inside. They can hit the glass. The one thing I love about this team, again, is the fact they hit the board so hard and they're so good around the rim. And, of course, they're a pretty good defensive team as well. And as you mentioned a little bit earlier about Will Wade, again, from the analytical standpoint to what he's done in terms of recruiting, again, he has turned this program around. Les, your thoughts on LSU? Look, tough loss to Florida, especially, again, after what happened in Rupp last week. But again, you can't win them all. But nevertheless, it's been a really good season thus far.
No doubt. I don't think the loss to Florida means anything. It was a trap game, difficult matchup. Tennessee looming on Saturday. If they had won this game and beaten Tennessee, they would be all alone in first place in the SEC.
Yes.
If they go into the SEC tournament as the #1 seed and they get this lofty seeding, I think the pressure might have been a little much for a young team like this. This kind of sends a message to them like, okay, you're not quite there yet. You know, you need to get back to work. You still have some growing to do. It would be good maybe not to be the team to beat going into the SEC tournament. So I think in kind of a strange way, losing this game could actually be beneficial.
Takes a little pressure
to them.
off of them?
Yeah, it takes some pressure off of them, and I think ultimately it doesn't affect them to any large degree as far as their chances of success in the postseason. But I love the guards that they have. I love the fact that they can play inside and outside. They can score quite a bit. I think all of that is great. The one question is that there's a lot of youth on this team.
Yes.
And how they handle the postseason is the wild card. We don't know. Will Wade doesn't know how they're going to handle it. But they've come a lot farther than anybody would have anticipated going into the season. And I think March is going to be fun around the LSU basketball program for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
And you talked about the LSU baseball team sort of being built, Les, you said LSU baseball team sort of being built for the postseason.
Yes.
I think this basketball team in a lot of ways is built for the
Yes.
postseason. You talk about teams that have success in the NCAA tournament. LSU plays 2-point guards all the time.
Yep.
So that your ball handling is going to be good. They're top 20 in the nation in free throw percentage. They shoot free throws, which is gold at tournament time. Les said they can go inside, outside. They have the English kid, Big B Williams, who can block. You got Naz Reid, who's totally made for the NBA and probably a one and done. But if you want to win in today's basketball, that's what you got to do. They're top 10 in the nation in team steals. They play tough defense, which could make a difference when games come down to the final 2 minutes. They do a lot of the things that, you know, whenever you're filling out a bracket, like some of the things you look for in a team that's going to advance, LSU checks a lot of those boxes. And look, the SEC is a fun league this year. Tennessee is a good team. Kentucky's a good team. Florida, I think, is a tournament team. And this game meant so much more this week to Florida than it did to LSU. Florida's a bubble team.
Right.
Before the game, ESPN had them as one of the last 4 in. CBS had them as one of the last 4 out.
Right.
So for Florida, they're right on the bubble. This meant everything. For LSU, I do think they were looking ahead to Tennessee. I don't think that it's sold out a week in advance. It is what it is. It's college. These are 19-year-old kids, and it's college basketball at the highest level. But again, I love everything. Even if LSU goes to the tournament and loses in round 1, I think this was a great season for LSU because I think he has set a direction for this team where they play fun basketball, they play smart basketball. He's going to get recruits. He's going to recruit at the highest level nationwide. I think we've already seen that with Naz Reid.
Right.
I love where LSU is right now. I don't think they're going to lose in round 1. I think this team is built to get to a Sweet 16, and I can't wait to see it. I haven't been this excited about a basketball team since Garrett Temple's team that beat Duke.
Guys, and go to you.
No, I was just going to say real quick, if they do beat Tennessee on Saturday, they're in a 3-way tie for first in the SEC.
Yes.
So this isn't
the Florida game means nothing.
it's not a devastating loss in terms of the SEC standings anyway.
Guys, and I think you both touched on this point. The only thing that may be worrisome is the inexperience. Okay, that's it. I mean, at this point, on the court, they got everything you need for a team to be a Final Four team. It's the inexperience that they don't have. Again, if they had more experience, you have more experienced guys, maybe so. You got a lot of guys their first year in the program, a lot of guys that are freshmen, transfers, etc. That, to me, may be the Achilles heel.
Yeah, it could be. That's definitely the biggest question mark. Now, the encouraging stuff is prior to the Florida loss, they had done extremely well in overtime.
Yes.
All of them, I believe, had been on the road previously. They went into Rupp Arena and beat the number 5 team in the country in Kentucky. LSU's probably won 4 times in Lexington in the history of the university. So they've shown during the regular season that they can handle a big stage and tough competition and pressure moments. NCAA tournament's a different animal, so we won't know until they get there. But there are encouraging signs that this team will be able to handle it. And I think a big part of that is having good guard play.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. And if you want to play at the highest level of college basketball, you're going to be playing with one and dones. I mean, Kentucky, it does it every year with 2 or 3 guys who are going to be gone the next year, and they're true freshmen. If you want to play at the highest level, and Will Wade acknowledged that. It was before the Kentucky game. It was fun listening to him talk about John Calipari, and I know he was referencing Naz Reid, who everyone thinks is a one and done and could be an NBA first-round draft pick. And he says he does an amazing job of coaching. I didn't realize what it was like to be in the one and done game and how hard that is to coach those guys so fast. Now, they're the most talented guys, but it's still hard to do that. But if you want to play at that level, you have to do it. That's today's reality until the NBA changes the rules.
How far can this team go?
I think they're a Sweet 16 team. And then at that point, it's a roll of the dice once you get there. But I think they're a Sweet 16 team, which is why I would love to see them advance, at least in the SEC tournament, beat Tennessee this weekend. To me, the key is getting a 3 seed or better. Look, they're 6 in the RPI before the loss to Florida. So you've got a good RPI with a good schedule, and you've still got Tennessee coming, and you're going to get Tennessee and Kentucky again in the SEC tournament. So your RPI can be top 10. There's no reason you can't be a 2 or a 3 seed, and I think that obviously gives you a shot.
Les?
I think Sweet 16 is realistic. The one thing you don't know about is matchups. If they get matched against a team has really good guard play themselves and maybe likes to slow the pace and forces them to play in a half-court setting and maximize the possessions and can match their guard play, I think that could be a difficult matchup. But I think winning 2 games to get to the Sweet 16 is very realistic, and I think depending on matchups, they might be able to go a little bit farther than that.
And final thoughts on Will Wade? What he has
Excellent hire, a hire that Joe Oliva needed.
Agree with that.
A lot of pressure was on Joe Oliva not too long ago. So far, it looks like Ed Orgeron was a solid hire in football. Looks like Will Wade was a home run in basketball. So I can't say enough about the job Will Wade has done. And let's give Joe Oliva some credit for making the hire.
I agree 100%. I think the question with Will Wade is how long you're going to be able to keep him.
Right.
If an ACC job comes open, now he's not ready for it yet, but let's just say he runs this 2 or 3 years. And I'll say this, look, I don't think a lot of LSU people realize the season Ed Orgeron just had by national ranking was one of the 10 best seasons in the history of LSU football. It was a great season. You got a gymnastics program in the top 5 of the country. You've got your men's basketball, your baseball. This has been and continues to be a spectacular season at LSU across the board, multiple sports.
Doug Mouton and Les East, thanks for being on our panel tonight. Certainly appreciate it. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLE at 10 p.m. Also, you catch it on Pelican Sports Television, 9 p.m. every Friday night, and always at ericasher.com. Catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2 in the iHeart Radio app. That's noon to 2 weekdays. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. And once again, all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com. Again, special thanks to our guest tonight, Doug Mouton of WLAE-TV, Les East of CrestCitySports.com, also the WLE production staff, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Naila Jones, Alex Chacon, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.